So Syndra finally got released on the PBE, and it's pretty late at night, so I'm pretty tired here, but I'm going to give you guys a preview of some of her abilities, and just a couple cool combos that can be used, well, particularly one with her ultimate. A couple things to say quickly. Her movement speed isn't terribly high. It's 305, which is kind of on the lower end. It's not the lowest, but it's on the lower end. Her attack animation's real good. I like it a lot. It's very responsive. Not too hard to last hit with if you need to last hit with, and a couple other things. Her passive, I'm just not going to even mention her passive as far as covering her abilities. All it does is mean when her abilities get to rank 5, they do more. So I'll mention that when I talk about the abilities. And not much else to say, just she has decently high base damages, but not very high ratios on her abilities. Not horrible ratios on her abilities, but not like super outstanding. But again, decently high base damage, so it all does come together, and it does make for a, so far, potentially good champion. Syndra's Q is Dark Sphere. It has a moderate range here. It's a delayed AoE like Cassiopeia or Karthus, so if you're in lane against them, this is what you're going to be looking at. Deals damage just shortly after it casts. You will see it going under, but it is going to be hard to avoid because it is fairly quick at going off. Has a 0.5 ability power ratio, so has decent base damage, but is not going to be her most powerful spell. But the thing is, it has a short cooldown, about 4 seconds without cooldown reduction. It does have a high mana cost, so even though you can cast it quickly, it's not really spammable. Like, you don't want to be clearing waves of minions over and over and over with this Q. The orb stays present, which is very important for her other abilities. After you summon it, you can do things with it with her other abilities. And then her ultimate as well. So the passive bonus with this is that it deals more damage to champions once you have it at rank 5. And the important thing about this Q, I don't necessarily know how Syndra players are going to build, but I will say that you can get 3 of these orbs out at a time if you have 40% cooldown reduction. You cannot do it with significantly less than 40%. You have to be pretty high up there to actually get them all 3 out at the same time, which does impact the power of her ultimate if she can land all 3 of those bonus ones out on a target in addition to the 3 that she has with her. So that's important. If you're going to get cooldown reduction, you want to go all the way with it and get the full 40%. Obviously things like blue buff can help with that. Syndra's W is Force of Will. This is a 2-part spell like Lee Sin, where you have to cast one thing before the second thing becomes available. So pick a target, which is an orb, a minion, or a monster, and we're going to throw them. So let's go ahead and summon one of our orbs. Pull it. It actually leashes onto me, then I can throw it. And when I throw it, it damages and slows enemies in an area around it. Has a 0.7 ability power ratio, so it's decent. It's actually a little bit more damage than our Q. Has a higher cooldown though. And the cooldown doesn't start until it's actually expired or been thrown. So, for instance, if I do this, notice it is not on cooldown. It's going to go on its full cooldown just as soon as this expires. If you don't throw it, it will expire on its own. So let's talk about monsters. Now the cool thing is you can throw enemy minions, not your own minions, and you can throw some player minions, so something like Annie's Tibbers. According to developers, you can throw them, and you can also throw jungle monsters. So one of the cool little things is, let's go ahead and pull this red buff, and throw it on our unsuspecting opponent. So what actually happens here is not only are we damaging our opponent, we're also damaging the red buff. It was a very trivial amount of damage right there. But we're also damaging the red buff or anything else that we throw. So let's go ahead and do this again here. And we dealt some damage there. And the cool thing about the red buff example is, in addition to everything else, we also just applied the red buff debuff to our opponent. Now her passive gives it a bonus when you get it to rank 5. And you apply the slow to somebody, it will last just a little bit longer. So 33% longer on a 1.5 second slow. Not a whole lot longer, but it's enough to offset, say, the effect of a Merc Treads or anything like that. Syndra's E is Scatter the Weak. This is a knockback with a 0.4 ability power ratio, so not all that strong, and has a super narrow cone and a short range. So what this does is it knocks enemies back. In this case, we'll do it right there. That's a decently long cooldown, even at max rank. So it knocks enemies back, and this cone, when you have your passive, when you've got 5 ranks in it, the cone actually becomes wider, so you have more of an area that you can use your knockback in. Additionally, it will knock back your orbs when you have them out. And when it knocks back the orbs into an opponent, it will stun them very, very briefly for a second and a half. However, it doesn't always work as you'd expect. Could you move up just a little, or down just a little? If I apply it, we found a lot of cases where it wouldn't apply where it seemed like it should have applied. So let's put the Q on top. No stun took place at all there. So our orb got knocked all the way back to the red camp, but no stun took place on our target there. And also, here's another example. We gotta wait just a couple seconds here. Well, that one actually hit. That actually was a total stun. But we found a couple cases where you'll fire at an orb in front of you, but if you place it just a little off, it will totally miss your target, like just barely graze by them. They won't get stunned. But that said, it's still pretty reliable. You drop your orb between you and an opponent, you're usually going to stun them. Right there we got a good stun. So there's just some outlier cases where it doesn't always seem to work when we expect it to work, particularly when it's right in front of you and it veers off a little, or particularly when it's on top of the enemy, when you place your orb on top of the enemy, which seems like an obvious combo. So you place it on top of them, and again, we'll do this one more time and just see if we have any more luck with it this time. Still no stun, and that one I actually placed just very slightly in front of the opponent. No stun, they got knocked back, they can walk away. So the key with this, at least as it is right now, is don't drop the orb right on top of an enemy thinking that it's going to be an easy QE combo to get them stunned while you go off and destroy them in other ways. Alright, let's talk about her ultimate, Unleashed Power. So another short range, and this is actually targeted on a specific champion, so her other stuff are all skill shots, but this is targeted on a specific champion. You can't misclick and hit a minion or anything like that. You're going to hit the champion. So if you've noticed these 3 fluff spheres we've had flying around us, so we don't actually use at any point. These are used in the ultimate. The ultimate is basically any spheres that are currently on the field will go and hit a target. So let's summon a couple here. I don't have cooldown reduction this playthrough, but I'll be able to get 2 out. And let's fire these out. So we have just fired our spheres at our opponent. We got 5 out on them. What does that actually mean? Well, they don't deal a whole lot of damage. This isn't a huge nuke. It's a pretty strong nuke, especially if you have 3 spheres out with cooldown reduction on your Q. But basically, with the base 3 that you have that are just circling around you that you fire out, it's a 0.45 AP ratio on top of some extra damage, and it goes up to double that damage with a 0.9 if you have 3 extra orbs out. So, again, not terribly strong, but not horribly bad either. It is what it is. Now, one more thing about her ultimate. The thing you might have noticed is we got a bunch of orbs down on the ground. This actually combos pretty well with her E. So once we actually get some more minions here, we'll see how this plays out.
This power is mine to command.
Now that's a huge AoE stun that just occurred there. That is definitely the kind of thing that could change team fights in a huge way. So, looking at her ultimate, it's not going to be something necessarily that you're going to want to use. Maybe it will be. Not necessarily that you're going to want to use to finish somebody off at low health. It's more likely that its real strong use is going to be in initiating a team fight to get all of your orbs out on the playing field right at once and get all of your AoEs, or get your stuns out on as many opponents as possible in a grouped up team fight. So that's certainly the kind of play I'm expecting to see out of it. Well, thanks for watching this preview. I will say that I do in-depth mechanical guides, which are a lot less tired and a lot more narrated and scripted and well edited. The Don't Feed series, if you aren't familiar with those, look them up. Don't Feed so-and-so champion. I've got a lot of the champions done at this point. There's still a lot more to do. And I also do very, very quick mini countering guides on champions called Champion Minis. So if you need something while you're getting into a game and you don't know how to deal with a champion, look those up as well. So appreciate you guys watching.